Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with coverage of round 12, the penultimate round of the 2018 Tata Steel Tournament, played on Saturday the 27th of January. We are heading to a grandstand finish. This table is the standings before the 12th round, and you can see we had 3 leaders after 11 rounds: Anish Giri from the Netherlands, world champion Magnus Carlsen from Norway, and Shakriyar Mamedyarov from Azerbaijan, all 3 with 7.5 points out of 11 games. So far I have picked 1 game from every round that I showed you, but this time I want to do it slightly differently. I want to have a quick look at all 3 games of the 3 leaders. I won't cover all the moves, but I want to give you a taster of these 3 games. Let's start with the game of Mamedyarov, who you can see here on the left. He played against the English Grandmaster Jones, and Mamedyarov was black. Jones opened e4, Mamedyarov plays many different opening systems, so it was hard for Jones to prepare for this game. In this game he played e5, knight f3, and a surprise was that Mamedyarov played the Petrov. Most people were thinking that Mamedyarov would have wanted to win this game with black against a struggling opponent, and the Petrov is not the most logical choice for that. Jones took on e5, d6 kicking the knight back, knight f3, black regains the pawn, c4 is one of the variations, knight c6, knight c3 attacking the knight on e4, the knights were swapped, d takes, and g6, which Mamedyarov called an interesting move afterwards, and he said he had played bishop f5 before. After g6, Jones played bishop g5 attacking the queen, bishop e7, and now bishop h6. And here black can try different things. One option is to play bishop e6 with the idea of moving the queen out of the way and castling queenside. But Mamedyarov decided to play bishop back to f8. And here queen d2 is an option for white. But Jones decided against that. He played the bishop back to g5. Attacking the queen again. Bishop e7 is the logical move. And bishop h6. It was not too late now for bishop e6 to make it into a real game, but Mamedyarov played bishop f8, and here Jones claimed a draw with bishop g5, and we have the same position on the board for a 3rd time with the same player to move. Both players were accusing the other for making such a quick draw. Of course, it's a bit embarrassing. It also says in the contract that it is discouraged to make draws before move 30, and this was a draw in 12 moves. You can also understand it. Mamedyarov wouldn't be too unhappy with a draw with black. Then he can focus all his energy on winning the last round with white. And Jones, he had a tough tournament and he must be quite tired. And a draw against the number 2 rated player in the world is never bad. But everybody started to accuse each other, and that was quite amusing. Let's move on to Anish Giri's game. He played with the white pieces against Bhaskaran Adhiban from India. Let's have a look what happened in that game. It was a Benoni opening, and this is his position after 23 bishop b6 takes a pawn on a7 from Anish Giri. We have an endgame and white is a pawn up. But black still has chances to save this game. Here Adhiban played knight e5. Giri afterwards said that he could have played b6, trying to lock up the bishop, and black has ideas of knight e8, bishop d8, and then knight c7. Giri said he was not too worried that he would lose his bishop because he always has a4 and a5 to free up the bishop. But b6 was an interesting idea. But knight e5 was played by Adhiban, as said, and it's attacking the bishop. Giri played b3 here. Afterwards he said maybe bishop b3 would have been better, because it is a bit of a shame to give up the bishop. After b3, Adhiban indeed took that bishop, b takes, and here's an instructive comment for you from Grandmaster Jan Smeets in the live broadcast. He said not only has white lost the bishop pair, also his pawn structure has deteriorated. In this position, white has one pawn weakness on d5, and after the swap, in this position, white now has two weaknesses, two pawn weaknesses, c4 and a2 are weak pawns. So maybe keeping the bishop on the board would have been better for Giri. After the bishop swap, Adhiban played rook c8, immediately attacking that c4 pawn. Rook e1, counterattacking black's bishop. Bishop f8, bishop d4. Giri said, I was glad to get my bishop out with an extra pawn. Is now attacking the knight on f6, so knight d7 was played. And now Giri defends his c4 pawn. Rook a8, attacking the other weakness, so rook c2, defending. Rook a6, rook e2, and here Giri said, and also the Grandmasters Hansen and Smeets in the studio said, that black should go back, rook a8, and try to defend this position passively. But Adhiban wanted to defend more actively and played rook a4. And according to Giri, it's already this loses by force. Black should have defended passively, bring the king into the center, and bring the knight to the nice square on c5, if possible. And he can always play against those two weak pawns that white has. But after rook a4, rook e8 was played. Rook takes c4, takes a pawn. Rook d8, attacking the knight. Knight e5, and kicking that knight away. Knight d3, and bishop f6, with a big threat of bishop e7, winning a piece. Rook e4 was played by Adhiban, controlling the e7 square. Knight takes d6, attacking the rook. Rook gave a check. King h2, knight f2. Looks a bit dangerous with rook and knight so close to white's king and all his pieces far away. But Giri had seen that there is no mate. Bishop g5, threatening bishop h6 with an immediate win. If you play king g7, then there is knight e8 check. King back, knight f6 check, king g7, and d6, and white wins. After bishop g5, Adhiban played h5 instead. He did not play king g7, he played h5. Bishop h6 anyway, and h4. And now we do have a mate threat. The threat is rook h1, checkmate. Either g3 or g4 is good here. Giri decided on g4. That gives the king the g2 square, so it's not checkmate now. King h7. And you can of course take the piece with the bishop. That's winning for white. But Giri decided to take with the rook. Of course now you can take that bishop on h6, but then the king is in a mating net. Rook takes f7, and the threat is g5 and rook h7, checkmate. You can still play g5 yourself to make a square for the king, but then there is knight f5 check, king g6 only move, rook g7 check, king f6 only move, f takes g5 check, king e5 only move, and we have a skewer. White is picking up black's rook. So, after rook takes f8, it's not good for black to take the bishop on h6. Adhiban played knight d3. Rook takes f7 check. And if you now take the bishop, it's checkmate in two moves. g5, king h5, and checkmate. So after rook takes f7 check, Adhiban played king h8. But the game was beyond saving. After rook f8 check, Adhiban resigned. White wins easily here. He has an extra piece, but also he will checkmate the black king. For example, king h7, knight f7, g5, making room for the king because rook f8 checkmate was the threat. But then f5, covering that g6 square, and there's nothing to be done against rook h8 and checkmate. So a good win, another win from Anish Giri, who's playing the tournament of his life. And what about the world champion? He played his last white game of the tournament against Maxim Matlakov, a grandmaster from Russia. This game was a Sicilian opening, and we have an endgame where Carlsen is a pawn up. We have rooks on the board, opposite colored bishops, and this is the position after the 50th move from black, h6, h5. Carlsen played rook g7 check, and now king f5 is the most logical move, but for some reason Matlakov thought king h4 was the right way to play. Of course he knew that his king now is cut off, is no longer taking part in the game, and as Grandmaster Hansen called this, black is not only a pawn down, but he's also a king down. Of course we all know that a king is very important in the endgame. We want our king to be active. Of course Matlakov knows that, but he must have thought this was the best practical chance for a draw. Carlsen played rook g1, attacking the bishop. Bishop all the way to the other side of the board. King b6, he wants to push his c-pawn. Rook e2, king c7, bishop back to d5, and here is an interesting variation. Carlsen could have played king d8, and if you then fall for this trap and play a bad move like rook d2, then rook g3, and if you still don't see it but played rook c2, then there's suddenly a checkmate on the board. So that's something to be careful of. After bishop d5, Carlsen did not play king d8, but he played rook g3. You cannot take that pawn now. Rook takes h2 would be a blunder because of the discovered attack. Rook d3. You're attacking both black's pieces. White wins here. So after rook g3, you cannot take the pawn. Matlakov saw that and played bishop back to h1. Rook c3 from Carlsen. Again, you can play king d8. And if you then take the pawn, this is a nice variation, then rook in g1. And because the rook is hanging, you have to play rook h3. You have to keep the bishop protected. But then bishop e7 is checkmate again. Very nice checkmate this. Again, Carlsen did not play king d8, he played rook c3. Now the king can escape, king g4, but the c-pawn is too strong, c6, and Matlakov resigned. The threat is simply king d7, and then the c-pawn will go through. And if you decide to sacrifice your bishop for that pawn, then king takes back, and this is easily winning for white. The h-pawn is protected, and very crucially, white has the right color bishop. This pawn promotes on a dark square, and the bishop is of the dark squares. So swapping the rooks does not help black here. It's always important to know that in this type of ending, because if the bishop is not of the color of the promotion square of the pawn, then a position with a lone king against king, bishop and pawn is a draw if the defending king can get in the corner. So we saw a little snippet of the 3 games of the 3 leaders. These are the results of round 12. Ho and Wei played a draw. Giri beat Adhiban, we saw their endgame. Kramnik beat Caruana. Svitler and Karjakin played a draw. Carlsen beat Matlakov, we saw the last few moves from that game. Jones Mamedyarov, we saw all the moves, all 12. And Anand and So also made a draw. We are set up for a grand finale on Sunday. The 2 leaders are now Giri and Carlsen. Mamedyarov is half a point behind. Kramnik and Anand can still theoretically win the tournament. Karjakin cannot anymore. Neither can Wesley So. And you see the remaining field there. Svitler, Wei, Jones, Caruana, Matlakov, Adhiban and Ho Yifan. The pairings of the final round, which will be played on Sunday the 28th of January. Wesley So against Ho Yifan, Mamedyarov against Anand. Mamedyarov is the only player playing white who still has a chance to win the tournament. Matlakov Jones, Karyakin, Carlsen. Will Carlsen take risks to try and win with black against the very solid Karyakin? Caruana against Fiedler, Adhiban against Kramnik, and Wei against Giri. If there's 2 or more players who will end in joint first place, then a tiebreak will be played with blitz games. I will be here after the round to tell you what happened. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel. Please leave a comment, and if you liked the video, it would be great if you could share it on social media. You also may want to check out my Chess to Progress channel. The link is in the description box. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.